Okay, I'm going to show you how to teach using Zoom annotations on a live web page and talk a little bit about why you might want to do that. First, I'm just going to demo this the way that this might feel to a student in the class. So you're going to just pretend for about, I don't know, 3 minutes or so that you're the student in a class and we are kicking off something about the required readings before the class. So here, get in your acting place, like feel your character, give your character a name, and get ready to pretend that you're a student out there in a class where that is being delivered via Zoom. And then we will come back later and we will show you the actual methods that we used and talk a little bit about pedagogy. But first, our little simulation of this class. So I'll start by just sharing the screen. So the class should have, everybody in class should have read the required readings. If you don't know yet where the required readings are, they're right in the LMS. So this is the module, and here were the readings that you were supposed to read before class today and be prepared to discuss. Super important that you read the readings, right? We can't really make productive use of the class time if you don't do the reading first, not second, but first. So let's talk a little bit about some of these articles. The first one is from Vox. Vox is sort of, I mean, they kind of made their brand on these things called explainers, where they go and they try to talk to experts and get the simplest possible explanation of a policy issue that would be understandable to a general public. And in this case, they're interviewing someone named Emily Thorson. And the first thing that Emily Thorson does in the interview is make a distinction between misinformation and disinformation. And I'm going to just throw this out to the class. I'll throw this out to Frank. Frank, what does Emily say the difference between misinformation and disinformation is? At least, you know, the sort of in a nutshell difference. Okay, so at this point you let Frank talk, right? You let Frank do whatever Frank does. This is me talking to you, learning how to teach with Zoom. And then you come back, right? And you use the actual article as a way of talking about it. We'll talk about why that's important later, but here we go. Yeah, that's right, Frank. So if you look, it's really right at the top of the article here. The first question, right? What is misinformation? How does it differ from disinformation? And what Emily says is it's about the intention of the distributor, right? She also says something that I didn't hear in your answer. Is a little more subtle, but she also says something that will become important later on in class, which is that disinformation is often distributed strategically. That is, disinformation is different from misinformation in that the people that spread disinformation often either know they are lying or don't care what the truth is, one of the two, right? They're not doing it by mistake, let's say. But it's also often different because the people spreading it are actually coordinating, right? They're actually coordinating. It's not just individuals making bad choices. It's people spreading it are often working together to get the false story out, to get it more believed, get it more exposure, or in some cases, just create more confusion. So the article goes on, the interview goes on, and it's an old interview, but there is one point here on what the most dangerous types of misinformation might be that I think is pertinent today. And I was wondering if, Marcella, could you tell us what does Emily see as some of the more corrosive or dangerous forms of misinformation? And again, this is where you let Marcella talk, right? And maybe she's right or wrong, but you're going to come back to the document here, right? In this here, I'm actually going to do it. I'm not going to scroll up and down because I get lost sometimes when I scroll up and down when students are out there, right? And so very often I'll just do a Control F, right, on the document, right? So we'll make sure we're on the document here. I'm going to do a Control F. And I'm just going to put in the term that I'm looking for rather than scroll up and down because it can be kind of dizzying. The thing here I'm going to look for is vote, right? And it's going to bring me right to that part. Okay, let's go back to the thing. I forget who the student was that we were, Marcella. Okay, yeah, Marcella, that's a great point. So the two things that you mentioned, both of them, absolutely. So the first thing that you mentioned here was this here, misinformation about voter ID laws, right? If that causes people not to vote, that has really serious consequences, and possibly, even though this is weird, right? Even though this is weird, it might have more serious consequences than something that is more bizarre, right? If people believe, for example, that, I don't know, if people believe that Obama laughed at the Benghazi attack, right, which absolutely did not happen, is absolute fiction, and is just bizarrely, would be a bizarre belief for people to have, right? If people believe that, that might not really change how they vote anyway, because the people that might believe that would generally be anti-Obama and the people, and so forth. It doesn't necessarily change how they vote. But if people believe that they are that there's voter fraud, right? And then that changes how people approach the polls. Or in this particular situation right now, we're seeing a lot of misinformation about mail-in ballots. If people believe that their mail-in ballots will be discarded or not processed or something like that, maybe they don't mail in their vote, and maybe that changes who votes, right? So that's probably the big one that resonates. If you look further through the article, you'll see that she also talks about medical misinformation. Now, this article is a little older now, right? This seems, some ways it seems quaint. It was from 2017, actually like fall of 2017. And the situation, I have to say, has gotten much worse since then. But it's an interesting start to how people, it's an interesting look into how people were thinking about this in 2017. And I think it could lead to what we'll talk about in our breakout groups. Momentarily, I'm going to send you into breakout groups. And I want you to think about this article. And I want you to say, what are some of the things that we have learned since? What are some of the things we've seen since, which either support Emily's points, or some of the things that really kind of go beyond what Emily was talking about here in 2017. So I'm going to send you to great breakout groups in a minute. All right, and so that's how you would do it, right? So that there is the student-facing version of this. Now, what does that look like on the teacher side? So let's turn off screen sharing here. I'm going to switch to a video above my tablet here. Now, I'm doing this on a tablet, but I'm going to also show you that you don't need any of the sorts of things. You don't need any of the you don't need a fancy tablet or something to do this. Now, the way I'm going to have to show this to you, unfortunately, is I'm going to have to share the screen, which is going to make this video here look very, very small on the screen. So I'm going to just walk you through what you're going to see. There will be, when I share this screen, there's going to be a bar right up here, right? And that's going to be my sharing bar. On the end of it is an annotation, right? A little annotation pen. And so I'm going to use that annotation pen, and I'm just going to mark things up. And I'm going to show you the rhythm. The rhythm is annotate, right? Hit the annotation, mark things up, clear your drawings, close annotations, go, right? So you'll see the rhythm, right? But one of the things you got to do is you got to make sure your rhythm is cleaning up the annotations you make, because as I'll show you in a minute, they'll stay on screen if you don't, and make your screen a mess. So let's go and show you this sort of rhythm. And again, apologies that this is going to get very small in a minute, but I think you'll still be able to make sense of what's going on. And so now we see up here, right? Now we see up here the little toolbar, and there's a little annotate here. This is how you do it, right? You turn that on, you'll see this bar here. I almost only use the blue pen, right? I don't really mess so much with this other stuff, right? but I use the blue pen, and then you just underline what you want to underline. You mark up what you want to mark up, like this. Now, it's important that before you move on, right, the first thing is you're going to have to close this before you move on, right? But if we just did that, look what happens here. As we scroll, those things stay in the same spot. We don't want that. So this is the rhythm, right? You stop, right? You annotate what you want to annotate, right? You clear those annotations, you close, you move on, right? You stop, annotate what you want to annotate, right? Clear, right? Close, you know, and then move on. Navigate, go wherever you want, right? Again, stop, annotate, note what you want to note, clear, close, move on. That's the rhythm of this, right? That's the rhythm that'll prevent your screen from doing all these sort of funky things. And just practice that. You can open up a session of Zoom that's just you, and you can sort of practice this rhythm. Once you get down the rhythm, it's actually very simple, right? You'll find that it's a pretty natural rhythm. But you got to do things. You got to do things, you know, in this order, right? Right. Because if you don't, what will happen is your screen will get increasingly messy. Now, one of the things you'll notice is I'm using this pen, I'm using this fancy tablet. You don't need to use any of that. This is me just using the mouse to do the same thing. We stop, we annotate, we underline. Particularly for this underlying stuff, the mouse is just as good, if not better, for underlying things and doing some, you know, some basic pointing as the pen. The pen really comes more into play if you're going to want to write a lot of text. Pen tools are better. But for this sort of stuff that we're doing here, right, we can do this as easily with the mouse as we do with the pen. And in fact, the mouse can be a little better at times because it's kind of smoother to go back and forth between annotation and not. But always remember, clear, close, move, right? Right? Stop, annotate, clear, close, and then move. And that's the technique. Now let's talk a little bit about why you would want to use this particular technique. I'll stop sharing here. But why would you want to use this particular technique? Why would you want to go over? Why would you want to go over reading like this? And I'll tell you, there's a couple reasons why. The main reason why is that you're trying to connect in the student's mind that the reading they do before class, which is all there in the LMS, is what's informing the class, right? That these two things are connected. Because if they see these two things as disconnected, right, two things are going to happen. First thing is, if they see the reading as disconnected from the class, they won't do the reading. They'll just come to the synchronous class and think they're doing their thing, right? So they got to see those connected in that way. The second thing is you're signaling, you're going to be going out and you're asking students on the spot to answer questions, right? To answer questions from the text they read. That's pretty stressful stuff, right? That can be pretty stressful stuff for students. And it's important that you indicate that you're not being tricky here. The stuff is clearly in the reading, right? It is right in the reading. It's stated in the same terms that you're using. And by showing the students with the reading that the material is there, you're trying to build that trust, you're trying to build that sense of fairness, that you would not, if the students do the reading, they should be able to participate successfully in class, that you're not doing anything to trick them, that it's all right there. And this is going to encourage the students to do the reading, because every time you do this in class, every time you show the document in this way, you are building up the belief in the student, right? That the reading is connected to the class and the class is fair, assuming you do the readings, right? You're building up that connection. Now, you don't have to just do it with articles, of course. You can do this with anything on your screen, right? You can do this with Excel sheets. Again, remember that rhythm. It's not, you know, you got to use the rhythm, right? The rhythm is stop, annotate, right? Clear, right? Close, go, right? Remember, just that rhythm. Got to get that rhythm down. Don't be scrolling without having cleared your stuff. But you get that down, you can annotate anything on your screen. You can annotate anything on your screen. And you can even just find a blank page if you want and write some notes using that blank page if you need to, or find some blank space on the page you're on to do that. But what this is really going to do, and the reason why I suggest that you consider this, again, if you get that flow down, is to build that sense in the student that they do the readings, they come to class, they'll understand the class, that these things are connected. And you're showing them that visually as you go through the class. And ultimately, that is hopefully going to get more students to engage with the asynchronous portions of your class, and hence be more productive, and just learn more in the synchronous pieces. And so that's how they do annotation of required readings using Zoom. Thanks for listening, and I hope being a student for a little bit wasn't so bad.